What's up, everybody? I thought today's video would be just me entering a subdivision in the Parcel Fabric. So I'm going to turn my camera and aim it at my keyboard, at the number keypad. And I had to dust off my keyboard for this, so I hope you all appreciate that. But I'm just going to let the camera roll as I enter this subdivision. I may do some voiceovers and some text entry as the video goes along, explaining what I'm doing, but I'm not going to verbalize anything. I'm just going to go for it. And it'll be in real time. There'll be no speeding up or pausing. So you'll know what it's really like to enter a subdivision in the Parcel Fabric in ArcGIS Pro. So let's get after it. Okay, everything in the Parcel Fabric is based off of records. Here I'm creating a record for the subdivision. I'm entering the name. And then the date it was recorded. Here I'm setting the ground to grid correction. I've covered this in another video, but I'm using this basis of bearing from the subdivision plat. Changing it to US survey feet. And entering the measured distance. Then I click on the 2 points that were referenced in the basis of bearing. Now I open the Traverse tool and change my layer to Subdivision Lines. Click on the tie point and change the line type to Connection Lines to get to the point of beginning. Now I'm changing it to the Parcel Lines under the Subdivision Lines layer. Now I'll just enter these bearings and distances, and the most efficient way I've found to enter those is using the 2 places before the decimal as the degrees, and then the decimal point, then 2 places for the minutes, and then 2 places for the seconds, then a dash, then the quadrant. 1 indicates northeast, 2 indicates southeast, 3 southwest, and 4 northwest. You may notice as I'm doing these that if there's a 0 in the degrees, I just enter the decimal point. I don't put any number for the degrees. Also, if there's just zeros after the decimal point in the distance, I just leave it. I don't even enter the decimal point. I highlighted this 183.2 feet because that's going to come into play later when I enter the lot lines. Here I create the seeds for the subdivision and then build the parcels. Now I'm entering the subdivision name in the name field in the attributes pane. Saving my edits. At this point, I'm copying the lines from the subdivision to the lots layer. That copies all the lines that created that subdivision boundary over to the lots layer. Now I'm going to turn off the subdivisions layer. You see it already has a seed created for that lot that came across from the subdivision. So I don't know if you notice here, but I don't hit the add data button. I push a button on my mouse. That's because I have a button set up for the add data function. If you want to see how I do that, I've got a video coming out soon about having a gaming mouse with GIS. I have a video about converting a PDF to a TIFF image. If you want to go check that out, I'll have it in the description. I also have a video about georeferencing an image. If you want to go check that out, I'll have a link in the description to that video. Here I'm just adding control points. Having a little trouble getting the control point to snap to my line, or the point. Then I save the georeferencing and close the georeference tab. Now I'm going to change the symbology of that layer so I can see through it. So here I'm determining what value to have the mask be. The mask will draw that value with no color or transparent. So now I just have the line work as a blue color. Here I'm splitting the lines for the subdivision boundary. I used the divide tool and I changed it to varying distances. I turned off the ground to grid correction because that fouls this tool up, and then I also checked the distribute remaining length proportionally. And notice there was 0.13 feet remaining in that line, and that was the 183.2 feet. So they either mislabeled that line or used the wrong distance in the boundary description. Where that boundary description closed so well, I'm thinking they mislabeled this line in the plat. Here I had to do a little math in my head to figure out that short line at the end. Figured out it was 25 feet. Now that little trick there was to get rid of the previous distances. I click on one of the other values and then click back on varying distances. Turning off ground to grid correction and then checking the distribute remaining length proportionally makes it so that the divide tool populates the Kogo lines with all of their attributes. If I don't check that distribute remaining length proportionally, the last line does not get its distance populated on the Kogo line. That little trick again to get rid of the previous distances. Now I'm going to start working on the right-of-way. I'm looking around to see something that starts with a straight line, because I don't want to start with a curve. It just makes it easier. I'm changing my layer to lot lines. Click my start point. And then my closing point. I want to start with a straight line because then I can just enter tangent curves from that point. It saves me from entering a chord distance or a chord bearing. As I do this subdivision, I have on my other screen a screenshot of the curve table from the plat. Entering the asterisk or the star key in the direction field for a curve indicates that that curve is tangent to the previous bearing. That keeps me from having to enter a chord bearing or a radial bearing. I can just hit the star key, hit 0 for the distance. That will get me to my radius field. Then I enter the radius, negative for left, positive for right, and then I enter the delta angle. I use the delta angle because it usually has the right bearing as you come out of the curve for the next line. See how this line has the correct bearing in it? That star in front of the bearing indicates that it's tangent. So I came out of the curve with the right bearing. I didn't have to enter that curve. I just hit enter, then 9.8. So I just hit enter again, and then 95.2. And sometimes they don't label the bearing of a line that's on a right-of-way because they have it labeled on the center line like this one. It's implied that the right-of-way is parallel to the center line. If you have multiple lines with the same bearing, you can just hit enter when you're in the direction field and it keeps the same bearing from the previous entry. Here you see that there's a closure report. I was within 0.01 feet of the closing line. Now I'm going to do the other side. I don't know if you could see, but there's a little tiny straight line at the beginning of this, and you've got to watch out for these in subdivision plats because you can skip over them and then you're 3.18 feet off and you don't know why. The only time I have to use my mouse is when I'm panning the view so I can keep the bearings and distances in view. I try to have it at the right scale and the screen so that I have to move it as little as possible. Now when you have a curve that shares the same radius, you can just hit star, enter, 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 delta. It's really quick. But if you did a straight line before that, you have to enter 0 in the distance field and then enter, and then it will bring you over to the radius. See here, I'll enter 0 in the distance field, a star, then 0, then enter, then my radius, then the delta. We got the right bearing coming out of that curve, and that's why I use the delta, because it usually gives me the right bearing coming out of the curve. Now here I'm entering the individual lot lines that separate. And this is where I think it's less efficient because you have to click on the starting, click on the closing, and then click new. I zoom in here to see which point I need to use. Click start, click closing, then enter the bearing and distance. These individual lot lines take a while because there's so much clicking. With ArcMap, you could be more efficient because you could just enter point numbers and it would do it, and you didn't have to leave the number keys. I like to do these lot lines in the direction that they go so that my labels match up with the plat labels. So here I'm going to the northwest each time. I could have started on the left and gone to the curve, but I like my labels to match what's on the plat. Now pay attention to what I enter in the distance field for this one. 110 minus 75. I didn't have a distance for that short bit coming off the corner, so I just used the full length on the line on the top and then subtracted the line on the right from that. So 110 minus 75 equals the little segment that I didn't have a label for. You're allowed to do that. You can do math in that distance field. Plus and minus, I don't know if you can do times and divide, but I don't know why you'd need to. You're allowed to do some math in that field, which makes it a little bit quicker. Pro is a little slower in processing entering these lines than ArcMap was. ArcMap you could enter real quick. Sometimes I type too fast and ArcGIS Pro can't keep up with it. ArcMap could. Pro I have to pause after every line. Saving the edits. I'm going to create seeds, and then build parcels. So that's going to build all my lots. Now I'm going to get rid of my keyboard camera. Now I'm going to change the symbology or label these lines so that you can see the lot lines came through with their Kogo bearings and distances. Turn off those labels. I'm going to change the symbology for lots so that you can see that they're polygons. Now I'm going to use the sequential numbering tool. If you're unfamiliar with that tool, I have a video on how that works, so I'll put a link in the description for that video as well. I put in here just the format, which is the hash symbol. then the starting value and the increment value. Here I'm skipping the right-of-way, I don't want it labeled. Here I zoom in to make sure that my labels match up with the labels on the plat. If they don't, it means I labeled something that I shouldn't have or one got skipped. Clear my selection. Now I'm changing to a line type selection. Just making my lots the only selectable layer. Now I'm copying those lines to tax parcels. Turning off the lots. You see that the tax parcels carried the labels across, and the fabric created seeds for each of those. Because each of those lines close, it created seeds on its own. The Kogo attributes came across with the copy. Turning off the plat. Building the tax parcels. Turning off the labels. Now I'm going to use the sequential numbering tool, change my layer to tax parcels, and then the format to be what the parcel number will be. So that's Stone Creek Village Phase 3, because my agency requires 4 digits in the lot number segment of the parcel number. That's why I have 4 hashes there. And notice here I did not skip the right-of-way. That's because I didn't copy the right-of-way over to the tax parcels. Zooming in to show that they get labeled correctly. Saving my edits. So now I have a subdivision. Lots. And tax parcels. So there's me entering a subdivision. I think that's akin to watching paint dry. I hope it wasn't too boring for you. I thought it might be interesting to see how a subdivision's entered in an ArcGIS Pro Parcel Fabric. Let me know if you like that. If you like this type of video, let me know, like it. Let me know in the comments whether you want to see more like that. And since you're still here, stuck around to the end, if you've got a subdivision you've got trouble with, you're having problems with, or you're having trouble with a certain curve, let me know. I may be able to do it for you or do a video about me doing it for you and then send you the file. Be sure to give that like button a chop and leave me something in the comments. Let me know how you started your GIS journey. Then watch this video right there. We'll see you next time.